Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Higher or Lower, brought to you by Spreadex and oddschecker. This is very exciting, a whole new endeavour as we look ahead to the Premier League season, looking in this episode at the Premier League team points spreads. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by two expert guests. We've got Jack Wright and Dan Worth alongside me. Guys, people watching for the first time, our first ever time doing this. Jack, firstly, tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate enough to be in a position where I'm a football, specifically betting analyst.
Expert,
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll leave you to say that, George. But yes, we've obviously done stuff together before, and I'm living the dream, basically, getting to write and talk about football on a daily basis.
Now, Jack and I have done this a few times, as he said, on a different show. Dan, first time working together, I'm expecting massive things. Big yourself up.
Yeah, okay. Well, high bar then, I'll do my best. I'm from WhoScored, so I'm the WhoScored rep on the show, and I'm a massive spread betting fan, so nice. I'm buzzing to be here.
Yeah, great. So the way this is going to work is, as you can see, we have these rather fetching panels. I thought I was playing table tennis this morning, but it turns out this is actually for the show. And we are going to go through, in round one, the 7 highest point spread teams in the Premier League. You can guess who those are, and one other as well. And we've attributed a value to each team. That is the midpoint with Spreadex's point spread. So if you go onto Spreadex site, Premier League, long-term markets or outright betting, you can find the point spreads there. And with spread betting, there's a sell price and a buy price. If you sell, that means you think that team will get fewer points. If you buy, the team will get more points. And we've taken the midpoint value taken to the nearest whole number. So hopefully that's not too complicated. It should get easier from now. But let's kick off in round one with the team, the treble winners, the team who won the Premier League last season. They won the FA Cup. They won the Champions League finally as well. It is, of course, Manchester City. They've lost a couple of influential players, brought in Mateo Kovacic. Their points spread midpoint is 87. So on the count of three, I'm going to ask you guys to hold up your higher or lower. 3, 2, 1. We've all gone higher. Okay, Dan, I know this is one you're pretty keen on. What's your reasoning behind it?
Well, my first reason is we put this to Twitter, and our audience have come in.
Your biggest view is the Twitterverse.
Yeah.
And it's also,
It's
Stat now, isn't it, as well?
Oh yeah, sorry, it's X. It is X. And 60% of our audience have opted for higher here, and I can't really see too many reasons to argue. City have beaten that total in 5 of the last 6 seasons. They've also had 198, so not only beating the 87, but quite easily. And I think it will be a bit more of a free run for them this time. Although you mentioned some of the guys they've brought in did lose Gundogan, which is a big loss. But I don't think that will impact their chances. And I think there aren't enough superlatives for Pep and that side. So I think the only option here is to buy and go above 87.
87, the midpoint value. Dan's buying. Jack, you agree?
I certainly do, yeah. So a good replacement. I think possibly you could say that Gundogan is the first time Pep's lost a player that he'd like to have kept, but a decent replacement, and obviously they've got a wealth of talent to fall back on as well. And we know what Pep's like. You'd possibly argue after winning the treble, there might be a bit of an emotional hangover had they come over from that, but this is Pep and his meticulous planning we're talking about here, and an elite force in Manchester City. And where would that motivation be? Well, one little nugget could possibly be setting a bit of top-flight history in English football. No side has ever won the title 4 years in succession, so that's going to be on their radar this season to set that piece of history in, say, English League football. And yeah, absolutely, they hit this number across the board. I'd take them to win the title. I'd expect them to win it by a little bit more of a comfortable margin, like Dan says, than the 5 points from last season. The average points total for the winning side in the Premier League over the last 5 seasons is 93, so I reckon they'll be knocking on the door of that.
Yeah, 89 points last season, so a little bit underneath the midpoint here, and we all think they're going to improve on that. I totally agree. Next up is Arsenal. Arsenal 84 points last season. The midpoint for their point spread this time around is 77, so 7 points fewer than they got last time around. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh no! We've got to be careful here, because opening day last season, when they beat Palace, I tweeted and said on a couple of podcasts I thought they would fall away very quickly after that, and I wasn't very impressed, and it turned out to be all right. So I need to be a bit careful here. But Dan, tell us why you think Arsenal are going to get fewer points this time around.
Well, I mean, they obviously had a great season last time out, but prior to that, you have to go back to 2013-14 for the last time they would have beaten that 77, which I think says quite a lot. Plus, I think most of the other teams in and around have strengthened. Well, obviously Arsenal have too, with the likes of Rice and Timber and Havertz, but I'd argue they won't be as strong as some of the other guys that the likes of United and Chelsea have brought in. So I think they might have a tough time. I don't think they'll finish too far below 77, but I think going above is a step too far.
Jack?
Yeah, again, I agree. We could probably do the middle paddle here, which says, yeah, about right as far as the line's concerned. But I've gone lower purely simply because I've got them pitched around, finishing around about third this season. As again, Dan says, their average over the last 5 seasons for Arsenal is 68. So I've worked on that as a bit of a guideline. Yeah, I think they're improving, but we all know that last season was a massive opportunity for them. They are going to have a little bit of a hangover from that, I suspect. And also, we have got those sides that massively underperformed that are going to be up much closer this campaign and taking points off them and keep pressure on around them. Also, obviously, back in the Champions League this season as well, which could have a little bit of an extra factor, whereas they kind of wrote off the Europa League last campaign once they had a chance of winning the Premier League. So I think there's a lot going into that, and so I just have them missing out. And let's make no bones about it, they didn't win a trophy last campaign, which I think they'll want to put right this season, be that a League Cup or an FA Cup.
Interesting, just sticking with the boot in there, saying they didn't win a trophy as well in your justification. Yeah, I basically think it's mainly down to the rest of the league being stronger. I think that they could basically operate at the same performance level and probably get fewer points because the teams around them are generally better, would be my reasoning. Next up in third, in terms of the point spreads and the order, is Liverpool. The midpoint there is 75, which is quite the hike, 8 points higher than they got last season with 67. Where are we looking here? 3, 2, 1, go. Oh! Now,
Right.
Jack, I know you're bullish on this one. Sorry to go against you.
That's quite all right. This is what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
all
I
about
didn't just do
opinions.
that just so we were different. I wasn't waiting and looking.
Yeah, I'll keep the homework covered up next time around. But no, if I was to be given one bet on this particular market, Liverpool would be where my money would be going. In fact, it has gone. So last season, 5th place finish. It was the lowest under Jurgen Klopp. First time they've not qualified for the Champions League as well. So they will be having Thursday night football. So that's a slight downer on that, but that's pretty much the only one I can find. I think there was a lot of excuses last season, or reasons, should I say, that they did underperform. They did suffer quite badly with injuries. They had come off the back of a massive campaign, obviously the prior season, where they were playing in every single game they could have done as they pursued that quadruple, of course. And they've been here before. They've bounced back from a poor season. As I said, last campaign, 67 points. The season after they won the Premier League, they only registered 69 points, so a comparable number. They then bounced back from that the following season with 92. So they know how to do it. They've obviously had a bit of a rebuild, and we talked about last season at length the fact that they were leggy in midfield and needing to put a little bit more energy in there. I think they've certainly done that with a couple of additions. Alex McAllister obviously coming in, which is going to be interesting to see how he then performs in there, obviously as a World Cup winner, and Szoboszlai as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing him performing in the Premier League too. A year on for both Gakpo and for Núñez as well, I think will be crucial for them, and say keeping the wide left players fit in Diaz and Jota. I think it's all there, and I think there's that burning anger. We saw it in Jurgen Klopp at the end of last season, which probably overspilled a little bit. I think he just wanted desperately to be competitive with that Liverpool side like he has been over the last few seasons, and I think he's going to use that anger in a positive way this season round, and I've got them being a lot closer to Manchester City, so I think there's a lot of juice in this line above what we've got set out there.
Yeah, so the midpoint, as I say, 75. The buy price for Spreadex is 76, and that's what Jack's looking to do. Anything to add?
No, I think Jack covered all bases, really. I think the key thing is the fact that it's all changed at Liverpool with the new signings, and at the point of filming, there's probably still a couple, if not, well, one or two to come defensive midfielder, you would have thought. My only concern is the loss of the two big experienced players in Milner and Henderson. How will they cope with that? And also, Liverpool have this love affair with Europe. So how much will they prioritise that? I'd argue probably little in this season, but you never know.
You never know. I think the reason why I've gone short, and I would be looking to sell at the price that is 74.5 now, is, as I say, that's still 6.5 points higher than they got last season in a stronger division. And it felt at times, like I'm a big believer that sometimes managerial reigns can be cyclical, and it feels like if things don't start particularly well, maybe we're getting to the end of the Klopp era. And they're, with a big churn of players, you say there is a big upside, and I agree, because we know that Liverpool under Klopp can challenge for the title. But when you consider last season, we saw Chelsea get 44 points, we saw Spurs get 60 points.
Yeah.
If things do unravel at a club, you can often see these high lines come too high. So
agree, I think so. The one thing I'd say is if there hadn't been a turnaround at the end of last season, I'd certainly be more cautious. But I think that when 11 games unbeaten in the Premier League at the end of last season, they won 7 of those 11 as well, right on a run in the middle, 2 draws either side of it. So I think a possible turnaround had started there. They've had a decent pre-season. So a good start to the season's crucial. And obviously we've got a massive game coming up in match day 1. So
absolutely, yes. Next up, Manchester United, who last season got 75 points. A bit of a drop-off expected with their midpoint being 73. Time to get the paddles out. 1, 2, 3. Oh, no. Old Trafford faithful. They're back.
Oh, wow.
They're back.
Oh dear.
Eric's at the wheel.
Right. Put the tin hats on. Here come the Red Devils.
I'm not saying anything. Dan?
Oh, yeah, I could take it away. I mean, firstly, it's not been a great pre-season for United. They look to have struggled. Obviously, they're another team that has strengthened, with Onana coming in and Mount. And again, they're probably not done in the window, I think. Højlund and maybe Amrabat on the way in, which, will continue to strengthen that side. But back in the Champions League, I think they'll want to do well in there. And again, it goes back to that point that I think the other teams in that sort of realm, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, have probably strengthened better than United have, and I think they'll cause more issues than United potentially will.
Jack?
Very similar thoughts. Yeah, I think Ten Hag done a fantastic job last season. It looked like it was set for disaster at the start of it, which does seem like a decade ago rather than a year ago, like with Ronaldo and getting stuff by Brentford and so on and so forth. But I think they massively overachieved last season, finished 3rd in the league, got to the FA Cup final and obviously won a trophy for the first time in 6 seasons. So I put him about 6 to 12 months ahead of where I expected him to have turned United. And I think he's felt a little bit as if they may be taking a backward step in pre-season. And he's got a little bit prickly, it seems. It'll be interesting to see if Rashford can replicate last season's kind of form, came out of the blue a little bit. He's obviously signed a new contract now. Is that going to spur him on, or is that going to put him back in his comfort zone? They did play a lot of games last season. 62 games they played. So you're right. I think the Champions League will take a big focus for them. And again, like we said, there's a common theme. Those other sides around them will be a bit more competitive. And I think they took advantage of that and overperformed their underlying data a little bit last season. So a little bit of a settling period for United, I believe.
Yeah, I've got little to add to that, apart from the fact that your notes are incredibly smart. Look, you've even got the crest at the top. Why don't you just show the camera?
Yeah, I know.
It's incredible. You could do a Clive Tilsley and start selling them.
I'll sign them off later.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, it is Chelsea next. Now, this is the biggest difference from last season's total to what their midpoint is for this upcoming campaign. 12th they came last season, Chelsea, 44 points. The midpoint here is 67, so fast maths, 23 points higher. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Right. Well, this is my strongest fancy, so I'm actually gonna I'm gonna bowl myself here. And Chelsea obviously last season was like a total disaster. Sacking Tuchel when they did wasn't popular with the fans, but clearly he didn't get on with the owner Todd Bowley. Graham Potter came in, who's a manager that I personally absolutely adore. But for various reasons, that didn't seem to work. They were massively underperforming their numbers then. But even so, the toxicity at the club was massive. And then, in my mind, probably one of the worst managerial appointments of all time, and going to get Frank Lampard in, where things really spiralled. There are a couple of reasons why I think they're a buy here. Firstly, in Maurizio Pochettino, I think they have at the very least a very, very capable pair of hands, like someone who's going to 100% steady the ship. He may not have won anything in the Premier League before, but the job he did at Tottenham, in my mind, is one of the best jobs we've seen a manager do. That kind of level beneath the likes of Wenger and Pep and Sir Alex and the rest of them. But he transformed that football club long term and short term. And there's no Europe. And I think when you consider teams in the past who've had no Europe, I don't think Arsenal would be where they are now unless they'd had that season under Arteta where they botched coming fourth, but at least they could still progress further. Last time Chelsea didn't get into Europe, Antonio Conte as manager, and they won the league. So when you look at the quality through their squad, when you think that in Nkunku, I think they made one of the best signings of the whole summer, and I don't understand why there isn't more fanfare around him. They're spending money on top quality young talent that will improve. Levi Colwill coming back into the side is massive. Again, I think there's very little upside to this. I cannot fathom why they would have a season similar to last season. Jack, tell me why I'm wrong.
You've sold me. You've sold me. No. I must admit, this was one where, again, I'd probably flip a little bit of a coin. And once I decided to go with the lower side of the market, I probably instantly regretted it. It's one that could really leave me with egg on my face, to be honest with you. As you say, Pochettino's a great manager. He's also a good project manager. He's also great at coaching younger players, which he's obviously got a whole host of talent. Stamford Bridge there as well, and so they're coming off their worst points haul since the 80s and the lowest goals return since 100 years. So it can only be upside. I've just got them falling a little bit short. I think it might take a little bit of time for it to gain traction. It might be a pace forward, pace back for a little while for them. Start to the season could be crucial. I think if they hit the ground running, then the sky's the limit for them, really. But again, tough fixture to open their campaign. Keep Reece James and Ben Chilwell fit as well, I think, is massive for them. And you're right, saying Nkunku, I think, is an outstanding signing. So hopefully the injuries just picked up won't be too long, certainly for your bet. And you're right, no European football is a massive part of it. But I've got them just, say, in the lower reaches of that sort of top six. And therefore, I say over the last 5 seasons, the average has been 62 points for the side finishing 6th in the Premier League. So I'll base that they'll fall just short of the line we've got set here.
Right, anything to add to that, Dan?
No, I think the key thing is the goals. You mentioned that they struggled to find the net last season, which is absolutely correct. But I think the signings they've made are quite shrewd and will help them go a long way in not having that issue this season. I also think Mudryk obviously didn't have the best time last season, but he's got like half a season in his locker now. You'd like to think he's found his feet, and even if he hasn't, they've got Sterling and a plethora of other options that they can look to. So I think they'll definitely do better than 44 points, but I think they could even get above 67.
Yeah, me too. That is my strongest fancy in terms of the teams that we're talking about. Next up is Newcastle, who have exactly the same point spread with Spreadex as Chelsea, 66.5 to sell, 68 to buy. So that means the midpoint we're looking at 67. Last season, 71 points in a season that, despite their newfound riches, I think certainly surprised most people that they were able to come fourth and qualify for the Champions League. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, snap.
There we go.
Dan, you can take us away here.
Yeah, I think the Champions League is the big thing.
Yeah.
They've improved the squads. Well, they have improved the squad. I was going to say slightly, but they have with Tonali and Barnes. I think they are both good signings, but I'm not sure if that's enough. The additional games they have to play on top of the travel, etc. I don't think they're quite prepared, and I really can't see them matching the kind of the strength that they were at last season. As much as I admire Eddie Howe and what he's done, I think it could be a step too far, and I can see them falling short of 67.
Yeah, that's basically the same reasons as me, Champions League, Jack.
Yeah, same, and also we've mentioned it already, so a repeat of the theme that other sides fell so short last season, and Newcastle were probably the biggest beneficiaries of that. And I mentioned Ten Hag being probably 6 months ahead of project there. I'd suggest that Eddie Howe was probably 18 months ahead of the project that he was set out. Fantastic stuff. I say great signings, but I was impressed with they were prudent signings, not those kind of championship manager filter by value and kind of signings. It was sort of pragmatic approach which impressed, and they've done superbly well. So be interesting to see Guimaraes this season, kicking on, and they struggled without him last season. Didn't win any of his games that he missed. So Tonali being in there to free him further forward could be crucial. But I agree. I think they're going to fall back to possibly where we expect them to be last season, which will leave them just short of the title we've got here.
Showing your age a bit, saying championship manager rather than football manager, but we'll...
I can't hide it. Yeah. The wrinkles are there for all to see.
I totally agree. And I think also there's expectation this season which can manifest itself in two ways, but it's not going to be quite as easy as riding that crest of the wave last season for Eddie Howe and his team. Two more sides, we initially were going to do the big six, but I'm not really sure who the big six are anymore, because 6 points lower than Newcastle is Spurs. 61 is their midpoint last season, which was a pretty terrible campaign. They finished on 60 points. At the moment, at the time of recording, we are still in a position where we don't know where Harry Kane will be next season. I guess that's going to have a fairly big impact. I think if it was announced in between us recording this and the show going out that he was either staying or going, this line would probably move. But yeah, as I say, the line at this stage is 61. What are we looking at here? 3, 2, 1. Okay, nice. Right.
There we go.
Dan, do you want to go?
Yeah, I guess Kane is the big thing, right? Like, there's no way of avoiding that. If he stays, they will probably hit 61. If he goes, they almost definitely won't, in my opinion. But obviously, they've got Ange coming in, who I am a fan of. But
Hard not to be now, isn't it? As soon as you see his teams play football,
yeah, exactly. And I do think he'll probably have a positive impact on Spurs. But obviously, those kind of things can take time. And they might not get off to the best start, particularly if they're still in amongst the Kane drama and saga, should I say. So I've gone for lower. Obviously, they don't have Europe, so maybe that'll work in their favour, but clearly I don't think so.
Jack?
And neither do I, yeah. I think last season could only be described as being dismal. It started off actually quite positively. I think the general expectation with Conte there was that they were going to be sort of challenging in around that top 4. It certainly didn't come out that way. The results sort of were okay to start with. Performances were awful, and then they both just turned into being awful. So, as I say, certainly going to be more exciting with Mr. Postecoglou if not on the pitch, then in the press conferences as well. I'd suggest it's a shame he's not following Pochettino into Spurs, because I think that would have been a nice transition and similar styles. He's now got to undo 3 very sort of dour managers, defensively oriented managers. That's inbuilt in the side. I think the new signings haven't landed. The older guard have kind of got a bit stale, so it's a refresh, and I just see a lot of the other sides performing better than them, and therefore the points won't be available to them. I see them finishing at the bottom out of those sides that we've talked about. They conceded 6 more goals than Everton in 17th last season. Harry Kane contributed 43% of their goals, so if he does go, and that is the big question here, obviously, as we talked about, if he goes, I'll base this on him going when I put this together. But even with him, I think they'll still struggle to hit that number. So I'm happy to go low.
Yeah, I'm very keen to buy, really. My finger's been hovering because I just don't want to. I know that with my luck, I'll click buy and then suddenly Kane will go. But it's looking more and more likely every day. I think that he's going to stay. You know, Bayern are obviously the only team who have any significant chance, seemingly, of getting him this window. And I'm still pretty convinced that he wants to stay and break this record, as far as I can see. Like, I think otherwise he probably would have already gone by now, even though he's supposedly open to the prospect of moving. I think no Europe is massive. And also, when you consider this, basically the same squad this time last year had the 3rd highest point spread. You know, they were 3rd favourites for the title, and it was basically just Antonio Conte getting to the end of his cycle that he does at every club a little bit earlier than usual, that ended up with them still finishing on 60 points. I think Postecoglou is someone who should be able to galvanise this club finally in terms of the way that he plays, the way that he gets his teams to play, and the way that he speaks in the press and the rest of it. I think it's a really positive appointment. I don't think they're going to, I wouldn't be expecting to buy at 61.5 and end up with a mid-70s points tally, but I don't think there's much downside to buying at this stage. I'd be amazed if it's a much poorer season than last season. Even if Kane goes, I'm going to say that as well. I think, they still have a quality squad. It's easy to forget there are other players there who are of worth. We're going to get down to the bottom now. One more in the first round of this first edition or first episode of Higher or Lower. And look at Luton, who came up through the Championship playoffs last season. Seen some snobbery about Luton's chances this season that, as an EFL fan, I'm not particularly happy about. But anyway, their point spread is 29 to sell. 30.5 to buy. Midpoint, therefore, is 30. Are we going higher or lower than 30? 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Get in, lads. We don't have to fight.
EFL sticking together.
Come on. I'll go last here. So, Jack, you can go first.
Oh, also, a big EFL fan, and it's just been amazing to see Luton go through. I think like 10 years ago they were competing in the National League. They're now competing in the Premier League. And as an EFL fan and as fans of an EFL club, you want to see that there is that chance for pretty much everyone. If Luton can do it from that position, then anyone can. So I really want them to kind of channel their inner Sheffield United from a couple of seasons ago, the Brentford from, say, a couple of seasons ago, and ongoing, of course, and really make life tough for the prima donnas of the Premier League. I think there's been quite a lot of disrespect about Luton and what they've got. I'd love them to get off to a good start, keep that kind of promotion momentum going. They're not going to... Premier League sides aren't going to enjoy going to Kenilworth Road. It's been well documented, of course, what Kenilworth Road's about, but 10,300 capacity, I think, is the lowest ever seen in the Premier League. So they'll use that as a force, but they're not a side that just relies on their home form. I think last season it was fairly comparable home and away form. And what I do like about them is they've got a very strong defence. And I think going into the Premier League with a strong defence does give you a chance. We've seen it before with other sides that have kind of done very well in the Championship, and then because they outscored teams, really struggling in the Premier League because they couldn't score as many and they conceded a lot. So if Luton can keep that defensive solidity, obviously they are going to get the odd bad day, but I think if they can keep that solidity going, they've got a great chance. And in Rob Edwards is a manager that I absolutely love as well. 39 years old.
Beautiful hair.
Stunning hair. I know. I could only
great
dream.
Looking man.
He is. I know. We'll have a moment for
Yeah.
a moment for Rob. But worked wonders at Forest Green, League Two. Expected to struggle and ended up winning the league there. I think everyone went a bit like that when he went to Watford, fearing the worst, and the worst did happen. And then it was the Watford fans that were doing that when he went to their nearest rivals and obviously took them up via.
Watford were 4th when he was sacked.
Yes, says it all. And a stunning job. So I think they've been written off by everyone, and they can play the role of giant killer every single week, which I think they're going to thrive on. And I do expect them to put up a real good fight. And with this total, there's not a lot of downside. So I think they can certainly have a good option. I've actually got them to stay up. And the average for the sides finishing 4th bottom over the last 5 seasons is 36.8. So that would give us a good return on that to go higher.
So I'm currently on the transfer marked page for Luton Town, and Rob Edwards is just staring at me, which is quite distracting. Dan, what about you?
I mean, I think Jack's covered all bases. I think the defensive points you made are absolutely correct, and I think they'll frustrate teams in the Premier League. One key point that I wanted to make as another key contributor to why I'm going higher is the goals. Obviously, Carlton Morris had a big season last year, and some will probably say there's quite a lot of pressure on a striker that is scoring the lion's share of the goals in the Championship coming into the Prem. But we've seen it before with Mitrovic and Tony and Pukki coming up and doing just that, and I imagine that he can probably replicate it, or I hope so anyway. And as you also said, 30 is not that bad. Like, there's not that bad of a downside, you think. And I also back them to stay up, and as you say, if they do stay up, you'd imagine they get 36, 37, 38, which if you're buying at 30 is a nice few points profit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the key thing about them, like if you look at the teams that got relegated last season, it's Leicester, Leeds and Southampton, who all tried to play or set out to the season playing really expansive ball on the ground football, high press, which Luton will do as well. But Luton's have no delusions of grandeur when it comes to that. And I think there is room in the Premier League for teams who don't like to get the ball down and play. Their profile of the players that they recruit is completely different to any other club, because they value the physical attributes maybe more than the technical, which means that opens doors up for them where players, such as Tahit Chong or Mads Anderson, even Marvelous Nakamba, who wasn't a particularly good signing at Villa because he couldn't do the ball playing stuff, becomes a very valuable player to Luton. So, and they're masters at it. There's no denying over the last 8 years that club have managed to wrestle themselves out of non-league and up to the Premier League.
Yeah, totally. Plays to his strengths, and I think Ryan Giles I'm looking forward to seeing him perform in a top flight as well, after having had 2 great campaigns in the Championship. And we know he can put a great ball into the box, which will be crucial. Set pieces as well, long throws, corners, all that. They could put a lot of pressure on some kind of fragile defences, and I'm very much looking forward to it. The last 4 sides making their debut in the Premier League all survived. And of course, all the sides from last season that got promoted survived as well. So there's history on our side here. Go on the Hatters.
Go on the Hatters. Yeah, all of us agreeing there. Come calling if they've managed to beat Derby's record. I'm the person to come to. Yeah, time now for round 2 in higher or lower, and this is just a bit of fun where I'm going to read out this is literally higher or lower. This is the game. Well, I'm going to read out a team in the Premier League. We've got the midpoints again, so just like in round 1 of their spread with Spreadex, and the guys have to hold up higher or lower for the next team as to whether they think their point spread is higher or lower. So starting with Luton, who, as we already know, the midpoint is 30, and I've already said that they are the lowest.
Right.
So if you go out here, because if you get it wrong, you go out.
Right.
You have to leave.
Okay.
If you get this wrong, then you're not getting your fee. Luton 30, Bournemouth.
Right. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
I'm going to go higher.
Well done, lads. You're very good at this.
Yeah.
38
So
is the midpoint there.
38.
Positive with the new managerial appointment?
It's a great appointment, yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I think there was uproar with Gary O'Neill's departure, but and then surprise with, actually, that's a good appointment. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. And did you say 38 for Bournemouth?
Yeah, 38. So the spread is 38 to sell, 39.5 to buy.
Okay. I
think 39 actually.
39, okay. Oh, maybe that 1 point is maybe. No, I think potentially should be going higher there.
Yeah.
Based on that managerial signing, and I think they can improve on last season. So
nice.
Yeah.
On then to Brentford. 3, 2, 1.
Marginally.
Correct. I'm now thinking I'm actually not going to tell you what they are because that helps you. So I'll tell you afterwards. Dan, Brentford?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting without Tony, obviously. But looking on last season, like the likes of Mbeumo and Visa kind of filled in happily. So I think they'll be okay. I don't think they'll feel the pinch of Tony being unavailable as much as some people think they will. So I think they'll be okay.
Jack?
Yep, nothing more to add on that one, really. Real good, solid structure, and certainly will be safe with others struggling below them. Disrespected, I think, a little bit from what I can see in the market.
Interesting. Well, let's see. Is this team respected or disrespected? Crystal Palace next up. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, you're both right again, annoyingly. I can now tell you that. So Brentford's point spread was 46. Crystal Palace are lower than that.
Yeah.
Jack?
Roy Hodgson coming back, is that going to be a mistake? We'll wait and see. Obviously, they wanted him out a couple of seasons ago. Then he came back and was stunning, all entertaining, Roy Hodgson. Interesting start. So
Can a leopard change its spots?
Can it indeed? Even older than me.
Yeah, I know. He was playing Championship Manager back in the day. Dan?
Yeah, I just wondered the impact of Zaha leaving for them. Yeah. And obviously, where are they going to turn to because they've relied on him so much over the years. And it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Okay. Next is, I can tell you the Crystal Palace one after we've done this. Wolverhampton Wanderers, Wolves. Julian Lopetegui having a very good start to life there last season, but a bit of off-field unrest, it's fair to say, over the summer. 3, 2, 1, go.
We're different here.
Oh, here we go. One of us now.
Time for me to exit.
Crystal Palace midpoint was 43, Wolves 39.
Oh!
Dan, you're out.
There we go.
But Dan, tell us why you're more positive about Wolves than maybe others would be.
Well, because you were wax lyrical about Lopetegui. So
but I also
Don't fall for that.
mentioned the off-field unrest as well.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it's not your fault. I think the managerial hype has got me.
Yeah, and Jack?
Yeah, it's a bit more like Cluedo than higher or lower. These red herrings that he's throwing around. But no, I think the loss of Neves is massive. Even, I like Collins. Collins going, I think, is going to be a big loss for them as well. And I don't really like much of the recruitment that they're bringing in at this moment in time. And I think Lopetegui, who is favourite to go, I believe, in the next manager to be sacked race or to leave his post, could well be the one to go. And then they're in serious trouble. So I've got Wolves going down.
Ooh. Wolves to be relegated. Wow. Only Jack left in the game then. Forest next up.
Tight. I'll go.
No one's left.
Good. I wanted to end it there. I won.
Perfect.
Wolves midpoint 39, Nottingham Forest 37. Yeah. Any thoughts on Forest?
We'll struggle, but tight. Yeah, very tight. Yeah.
A couple of others we had next up were Burnley and Everton. Burnley 41, their midpoint higher than Everton at 40. Dan, do you think Burnley's expansive play, Vincent Kompany, brilliant in the Championship last season? Do you think that's going to translate well?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if it will translate well enough to see them push on a bit higher than just survival. I think that's probably realistic though, just beating the bottom three. I think this game is proving how tight it's going to be down there, right? With everyone's all around the same point, so you never know. But yeah, I like what Kompany's doing, and I hope they can stay up actually. Yeah.
Great stuff. And a final word on Everton, Jack.
Yeah, I think they've been kind of bigged up a little bit too much, really, with the markets at the moment. I've got them struggling again. I don't think they set the world right under Sean Dyche at all last season, although his hands are fairly tied. Bringing in Ashley Young's not exactly the biggest marquee signing. a couple of possibles in there, but yeah, I think they're going to be, again, another season of struggle at Goodison. Sticky for the toffees, as we say.
Well done, very good. And that brings our first episode of Higher or Lower to a close. We're about to record another episode now on players in the Premier League and their goal spreads, so make sure you check that out on the oddschecker YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to for more episodes coming up in the coming weeks. And do check out Spreadex for all of your spread betting needs ahead of the Premier League season. We've got the EFL starting this weekend. Loads more with the Women's World Cup going on as well. So make sure you sign up for an account with them. But do remember that losses can exceed your initial deposit. And please ensure that you're gambling responsibly. Enjoy the beginning of the football season.